All right, I have this after 10 o'clock this morning. So, good morning, everyone. Far and wide, thank you for joining us this morning for the next Eastern Region Science Sharing webinar. We have a very special topic and a very, very special group this morning to speak to the next topic, which is the introduction to the Pathfinder Road Weather Program. As a heads up and just some housekeeping rules, so this morning, this webinar is being recorded via Google Meet. So to avoid any recording of things we would like to not have and be able to keep the recording, please just keep webcams off and mics muted until you either raise your hand or throw a chat in to speak if you have any questions along the way. And we encourage participation this morning as much as you'd like to join the conversation on this very important topic. To kick things off first, I just want to introduce a few of our speakers this morning before we get started. So first we have Rome Abtahi. He is the Service Transportation Program Manager at National Weather Service Headquarters based in Silver Spring, Maryland. He began his career as an ORI student in 2003, went on for 6 years in the field, 2 of those years at the Elko, Nevada WFO, and then 4 years in San Juan, Puerto Rico, followed by 13 years to the current day at National Weather Service Headquarters. Outside of work time, he enjoys activities like kite surfing, drums, listening to Rush, and working with everyone out in the field, as well as interagency hazmat interactions, and of course, DOT personnel across the country. Secondly, we have Stephanie Siprel. She's an emergency response specialist for the Central-Region Headquarters in Kansas City, Missouri. She was born and raised in Lafayette, Indiana, graduated with a meteorology degree from Valparaiso University in Valparaiso, Indiana. She began her career with the Weather Service in 2008 as a SCEP student, and since then has worked at a number of different offices, including Louisville, Kentucky, Wichita, Kansas, and Boston, Massachusetts, where she provided weather, and climate information to key decision makers. And she has since been at Central-Region Headquarters since 2018, leading both the Winter Weather and Service Transportation Program while being an emergency response specialist. And she enjoys all the aspects of her job, and outside of work, she enjoys exploring restaurants, gardening, and traveling around the world. In addition, we have Eric Allen this morning, my colleague at Eastern Region Headquarters Scientific Services Division. We also have John Banghoff, meteorologist from WFO State College, and meteorologist Ashley Novak from WFO Wilmington, Ohio. And as part of this group, we also have Melissa Despigna. She's the MSD representative on this group. She's the Severe Fire Weather and Aviation Program Manager at Eastern Region Headquarters in the Meteorological Services Division, as well as Matt Duty, who is an emergency response specialist at the Eastern Region ROC as well. So with that said, I'm going to hand the floor over to my colleague, Eric, to take it over. Eric, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jordan, and thanks everyone for coming. I think this is a really important topic, and it's not something new, but it's something we want to highlight and elevate and bring to Eastern Region and kind of see if we can grow it organically and expand efforts, which you may already be doing in your own offices. So let me share my screen here. So before getting started, and I believe everyone can see my screen. If not, Jordan, jump in. You may be asking, what is Pathfinder? And so, before we start talking about Pathfinder, I want to tell you what it is. So the Pathfinder Initiative is an effort supported by the Federal Highway Administration and NOAA, which facilitates collaborative partnerships between the National Weather Service, State Department of Transportation, and private sector weather service providers that support the DOTs. And that last one's kind of critical because it's not too often that, we actually have in a directive, the ability to work with a private sector entity. But in this case, when we're working with the state DOTs, we can work with their private sector partners to support the DOTs. And the value of this collaboration is to improve the assessment of weather impacts on the transportation system and the ability to develop concise and consistent messaging for the traveling public, which will result in safer and smoother travels. And so kind of just going over the mission statement for the Pathfinder project is that it's a joint initiative that aims to save lives, time, and money on our nation's roadways by minimizing the impacts of weather through the dissemination of consistent and actionable information. And I feel like those two words are very, very important, because if we're not on the same page with the private sector providers and so on and so forth, you get different messages and people don't know what to believe. And so this has been going on since 2014, and we'll be hearing more from Rome and Stephanie about more specifics. But I just want to give you a high-level overview of what Pathfinder is before we start talking about Pathfinder. So why is this important? Why do we want to? Why are we talking about this? This is something I'm pretty passionate about because our mission is to provide weather, water, and climate data, forecasts, warnings, and impact-based decision support services for the protection of life and property. And we often forget the last part and the enhancement of the national economy. I think we look at, we sometimes overlook that, but adverse weather causes $42 billion in economic losses on U.S. roadways, according to the Transportation Statistics Group, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. And that was over a decade ago, which is ironic. Something I always find a little bit ironic because that's 10 times the amount of loss each year compared to air traffic delays. And for the air traffic, FAA is a big partner of ours, and we support them. And we have the Aviation Weather Center and the CWSUs. But we don't have something like that for transportation. And that's where Pathfinder comes in. This stuff, we got to do it local. And that's why we need buy-in at the local level to embrace the Pathfinder program and the initiatives. 21% of vehicle crashes are related to weather, and that's a sizable amount. And 15% of highway traffic congestion is caused by bad weather. But most importantly, here's some statistics of a 10-year average for weather-related crashes. Almost 1.25 million crashes every year due to weather-related crashes. About 420,000 people are injured every year, and 5,376 on average people are killed due to weather-related incidents on the roadways. And even if we can, if our DSS can lower this by like a percentage, we're talking tens of thousands of crashes, thousands of people preventing injuries, and like hundreds of people lives we're saving. So we can't prevent the weather, but we can work to provide that DSS, that actionable information that can lead people and our partners to make good decisions. So that's kind of what we're going to be hearing in this presentation here. And so I want to hand this over to Rome to introduce this from the national program level. Also, I'm going to put in the Google or the Google Meets chat channel. We have a Google site, East Region Google site. Feel free to kind of pin this and go back and look at this after the call, and you can look through some of the resources we put together. All right, Rome, you're up.
All right, thanks a lot, Eric. Let me see if I can get my presentation screen up here. All right, can everyone see it?
We are good to go.
All right, great. All right, so like Eric said, Pathfinder, it's a program that's nationwide at this point. It started out in Western Region in the I-80 corridor, and it started really from the impetus of the 2002 Olympics, I believe, where they had some funding, and they had some a local MIC out there who was really passionate about the Pathfinder program, and it's really spread all across the country from their original efforts in the state of Utah, where they have a very mature program by this point. So here's just a little graphic representation of that. You see the I-80 corridor. You've got some of the big cities along the way: San Francisco, Reno, Salt Lake, and it just ended up spreading from there, moving to Wyoming, who has a great program, to all kinds of states around it throughout the Central Region, which you'll hear from Stephanie on after my presentation. And it's just done really well, and I'm super proud to be a part of this program, because it really, look, it gives us a chance as meteorologists, as whoever we are in the weather service, to have direct contact with somebody who carries out our mission. And I've always found that to be personally very exciting, to get out to the field and meet the people who are doing the real work. So, how do we communicate impacts? And impact messaging is a very difficult thing to wrap your head around. It's simple to begin with, but we all know that it's very hard to get the word out to different state agencies. I'm in Pittsburgh right now, so in Pennsylvania's sake, you have Turnpike, you have different you have state agencies, and state agencies are always complicated. And in my experience, they are generally, it's generally easier from the weather perspective to communicate Pathfinder than it is from the DOT's perspective to their own audience, if that makes any sense. Because we have 21, 23 people in an office, whatnot, and then regional support. But that's a very small amount of people compared to what DOTs have. I mean, this isn't Eastern Region's case, but obviously you have the state of New York, which is enormous in terms of its complexity. But I will tell you, in California's case, where we've had where we've worked with them directly, they have 100,000 DOT employees. So you could just imagine how complex that gets. So really, our job here is to go all around the country and to try to develop this program from the local level to have one consistent message go out to the public. And we'll get into that a bit later. So what are some of the ways we do that? We've got the preseason meetings, we've got during event meetings, we have after season reviews and reviews after various events that you can do. We've got NWS chat, and certainly with the 2.0, that's improving now. Certain offices do coordination pages. I don't know, honestly, I don't know where Eastern Region stands on that. I know that some of the Eastern Region tools that have been being used for many years are incredible in terms of communicating the probabilities to the public in a very very understandable way. So what are we looking for to get out of this? I came from the field, and I felt like when I was sitting in on these kinds of things, it all came down to, well, what does that mean to me as a forecaster? And what that means is trying to reach a consistent messaging from the Department of Transportation and the National Weather Service to the public. And studies have shown that, and it's kind of just common sense, really. I mean, when you have, as Eric was saying earlier, when you have two agencies that the public trusts deeply, in this case, telling people what's going to happen or what action they should take, I should say, what's the decision support mechanism, then you have a much higher chance of your end user as being the public carrying out that and spreading the word, really. So I think it makes all of our jobs easier in the end of the day when we have a consistent message. But that consistent message is quite hard to get to. So that's really what the Pathfinder program is about. It's about meeting people. It's about finding out where we have commonalities, examining where we have challenges, and trying to get down to the heart of the matter. And when it comes down to a region or a state, I should say, not a region in the Weather Service perspective, but a state DOT and a Weather Service office getting together, I'll tell you, in every single instance, it's been positive. There's never been, I mean, sure, tough things come up, right? That's life. Tough things come up. But there's never been an instance where we've left that environment without at least a better understanding of what our partners do. We've met some people face to face, and we've done our little part to making the world better. And so this graph really is about how that occurs. This is from Randy Graham, who's in Central Region now, but used to be the MIC of the Salt Lake office. And this shows I believe it shows the decrease in actual commuter, the decrease in traffic that they tried to get throughout their messaging program through their various DMS signs that they had coordinated with the DOT, and the overall action that they wanted the public to take based on the forecasts. And I won't spend a whole lot of time on these. I think that, you know, we could maybe discuss them later if we have time, but I do want to get to make sure that we get plenty of time for Stephanie here. So look, some of the examples of the current Pathfinder success, and it's very hard to break this down. I'll tell you, this is challenging for me because there's been so much success in Pathfinder that it's tough to be like, this is the one best place that does it, right? Every place, for instance, we have I think the program that's developed in the state of Pennsylvania is far surpassed my expectations. I thought it would be a very, very tough place to get Pathfinder started, and it turns out that it was much better than I thought it would be. So that kind of thing. I have this slide up about Utah because it was really hard in the beginning. You know, they were very honest about how it all started there, and it wasn't all friends and, you know, great times. It was, in the beginning, there was kind of a sense of, from the forecast office perspective, is like, who are these people telling me what to do? And from the DOT perspective is kind of the same thing, but Dr. Dunn, Larry Dunn, who was the MIC at the time, had this philosophy of, you know, let's just keep going with it, and we'll work out the kinks as we go along, and it'll get better. And it did. And there's, I believe, 12 and maybe even more than that now, full-time, fully employed meteorologists working for the DOT at their transportation center. And it's just an incredible public work of carrying out our mission. So it's something I'm very proud to be a part of. So here, I'm not going to go through and read all this, just kind of boring word slide, but you know, WFO participation, like I said, you can start off with a kickoff meeting as a meet and greet. It can be just basically that simple. You can have a mid-season check as the winter's going along, and a postseason assessment. You know, these are just some of these are the ways it's been done in the past at some offices, and every state is different. Okay, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this one because there is some general fear out there. I think it's much less than it used to be, but I'll say that I dealt with a lot of this when I got into this program about 6 or 7 years ago, which is, will this interfere with the private sector? And the answer is basically no, it doesn't interfere with the private sector at all. In fact, the private sector it helps us out enormously. And I'm personally, although it's not my decision, so I'll say that outright, but I'm heavily in favor of private sector involvement, you know, heavily in favor of it. They've helped us out in every case, and we have tremendous relationships with DTN, with WeatherNet, with, you know, I'm going to get some of the names wrong because these companies change, and they change their you know, they change their company names and whatnot, but it's basically the same people. You know, I've met the same people along the way, and it's been awesome. So my kind of tagline is I try to push for more private sector involvement everywhere that I go. And, you know, a lot of times we end up providing a service that the state says, well, the weather service is, quote, so good at doing this that we don't need a private sector meteorologist. And, you know, I respectfully disagree with that viewpoint. I mean, there's nothing I can really do about it. If a state wants to make that decision, there's nothing we can do about it as the weather service. But you know, it helps big time to have the private sector involvement. So, you know, I try to push for that everywhere I go. So here's a little bit about what to expect in your region. And of course, your region will be the point of contact on this. So, you know, work with Eric, work with Jordan, if that's appropriate. And if it can't be solved or hashed out, or you can't get your answer at that level, then then I can help out. But your region will decide how closely they're going to work with Pathfinder, and they're going to decide how closely, how to monitor the progress of their WFOs and Pathfinder work. And we at Weather Service Headquarters, we don't dictate what you can and can't do. So that, I hope that alleviates some stress out there that people might have, because it has come to me a few times where they say, oh my God, we are already doing XYZ. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for that as somebody who comes from the field. Trust me on that. And, I don't say thou shalt do this and that and the other thing. That is up to your regions. And I'm going to support your regions, your region in this case. And, and they're going to support you. So that ends what I've got. I will stop presenting here and pass it over to Eric. Do I pass it over to you?
Yeah, you can pass it over to me. Yeah, I think, and before we go to Stephanie, Ashley, you were sharing with me a week or two ago, like, that question of a DOT official comes to you. It's like, do we even need the private sector? And, I know there's like the directives spells out like what we can and can't do. And we cannot advise decisions for the DOT. And so that's really where the private sector is. But Ashley, can you share a little bit about, that time where you were approached by a DOT official? Why do we need the private sector? You guys are doing the job.
Sure. I actually got approached 2 different times at 2 different meetings where I was asked about that. And really, it's a tough question, but it's one of those things where, you talk about the services that you provide and say, hey, but this is also what DTN provides, and really leave it up to them. It's in their court to make that final decision. But showing that there are 2 different services that are being provided by 2 different entities, and that working together with that really helps with that collaborated message, and bringing all the different viewpoints to the table there to help with the protection of life and property.
Thanks, Ashley. Does anybody have a question for Rome? We've got time for 1 or 2 questions. All right, not hearing anything. We can always circle back. Rome will be here. So everybody, at the end, we can have more questions. Stephanie, you're up.
Oh boy. Share my screen. Alrighty. I assume we can see the screen.
You're good.
Great, thank you. As Jordan mentioned, my name is Stephanie Saprell. I am an emergency response specialist at Central-Region Headquarters in the ROC, but I also have a dual role. I'm also the Central-Region Pathfinder and Winter Program lead. So one thing I just want to make kind of clear is when it comes to Pathfinder, there's different types of Pathfinder all across the country. There's some that are more formalized. They have a SOP and everything is signed and agreed, but there's also states who are just doing some Pathfinder strategies. And I think that's what Federal Highway really wants us to accomplish, is making sure that we are working with the state DOTs. We are collaborating on a consistent message. We are working with that third-party entity to help amplify the message. So this is just a quick shot from Federal Highway of all the states who are doing Pathfinder strategies. So here at the regional level, so Roham kind of talked about, he stays away in terms of he supports the region. So here's kind of what I do at Central Region and how I support our field offices and other aspects that I do with the program. So first and foremost is fostering the Pathfinder program, or doing Pathfinder-like strategies, continue relationship with Federal Highway because they are our main core partner. Really wanted to pass along any science and service initiatives. And Ashley, heads up, I stole something from you. And then also provide guidance and best practices to the field, and then also participate in other road weather meetings and initiatives that come our way. So here in Central Region, we have 9 states that are officially part of the Pathfinder program. 2 of them are actually doing Pathfinder-like strategies, and actually pretty similar with Missouri. They don't want to do anything with the federal government outside of the Weather Service. So pretty similar thing. They don't want their own meteorologists. They just want the Weather Service to provide the information for them. But as I mentioned, we have 9 states formalized in the Pathfinder program. And since we do have a mix of new and old states who have been doing this for a while, who've been a part of the program for a while, really wanted to kind of create a startup page or just a one-stop shop for them. So this is just Central Region's example of the of our Pathfinder Google site page that I know Eric shared Eastern Regions. But wanted to kind of draw attention to our Pathfinder Startup Bundle. So this Startup Bundle really has everything you need if you want to be a part of the Pathfinder program. It kind of has an overview of what Pathfinder is, a timeline of the Pathfinder process, really a checklist of what you and your surrounding WFOs need to do to kind of get together before you start meeting with the state. And also we have a list of Pathfinder mentors to help you in that process. We also house Pathfinder briefing examples. So what you would do if a Pathfinder event occurs, we just have examples from several different states, so you can kind of get a look and feel of what some particular state DOTs are looking for. We do have examples of formalized SOPs if you want to go down that route. And then we also have a couple of examples of what a Pathfinder Summit presentation looks like. So Roham kind of alluded to this. The Pathfinder Summit is really the kickoff of the Pathfinder program and initiation, where you and your surrounding offices will meet with your state DOT and districts and start talking about the Pathfinder program together. So we also have Pathfinder best practices. These are things that I might see across from other regions or from Federal Highway, and I kind of just toss them into these buttons or tabs or bundles as for our offices in Central Region, so that they have the latest and greatest information to help with them in terms of communicating with surrounding DOTs. Other things we do when it comes to fostering the Pathfinder program here at Central Region is we encourage each state to try to meet in person if possible. So I try to attend at least one state meeting a year with our state and the state DOT in our offices. But I also try to secure some funding so we can make sure we can get each office in that particular state at that meeting. So here's an example of us at the Nebraska Pathfinder meeting that occurred in Kearney, Nebraska, and I had to work and get funding for our offices in Cheyenne and North Platte to attend. So that's one little caveat of the regional perspective. I also do one-on-one meetings with each state who is a part of the Pathfinder program or doing Pathfinder-like strategies, just to see how things are going. So I do it before the season and after the season. So when you hear like, what are their concerns? How are things going? Are there any best practices that might be able to share across the region? Any great tidbits or information? And having these consistently actually led to us to have a webinar in the winter of 2021, really kind of sharing across Central and even into Western Region on strategies and what each unique thing each state is doing. So it really provided some great information sharing across the board. So, the other thing we're really pushing for in Central Region is to really highlight that the Pathfinder program is not just about winter. We've had a lot of incidences over the past several years where Pathfinder program definitely could be utilized. And I believe it was in the Hurricane Ida service assessment that came out that it actually stated that the Weather Service should work both nationally and locally to expand the Pathfinder program for additional weather hazards, including potential response support for evacuation events. So with that, there's this push to do more, but what does that look like within the Pathfinder framework? So that's definitely something we're exploring here in Central Region. Because again, it's just more than winter. And just for an example, back in May of 2023, we actually had a farmer who was plowing a field that was just planted, which actually caused a dust storm along Interstate 55 in South Central Illinois, which resulted in 8 fatalities and 30 serious injuries. So, so that's something we're really exploring here in Central Region, is how to expand the Pathfinder program and make it, and kind of encourage our state DOTs that we need to have these type of conversations outside of the winter season. So relationship building, kind of switching gears with the Federal Highway Administration is definitely something that we do here in Central Region. We work together with them and attend their meetings. The Pathfinder Summit Partners Meeting, that's really just kind of focused on Pathfinder in and of itself. And then also the Road Weather Management Stakeholder Meeting. And that meeting, if you have a chance to attend, if it does come into your region, I definitely encourage you to try to make it. That one's really eye-opening because it covers everything outside, everything that involves road weather. While Pathfinder is just a little subset of it, it talks about everything from autonomous vehicles to new weather stations that could be utilized for weather information, to plowing strategies. So really, you get to hear from the state DOTs on what their major concerns are. So definitely want to encourage you, if you can, to attend that meeting or even the Pathfinder meeting. Science and services initiatives here in Central Region, we really want to have or push to make sure that science drives the level of service that we provide. So reaching across our regional boundaries, we actually had Ashley from the WFO Wilmington. She worked with us in spinning up both the state of Kentucky and the state of Indiana. And she shared her research that she has done with ODOT on effective snow squall messaging and actions by decreasing false alarms. So thank you, Ashley, for helping that. So that's something that we've kind of spread across Central Region, utilizing some of that research and information. Our Iowa office utilizes Pathfinder strategies, not an official Pathfinder states, but they do a lot of great stuff. And in fact, they did some statistic analysis in terms of crashes and how much snow fell and how many crashes did occur. So utilizing that information, they put together with Iowa DOT this information graphic kind of highlighting that 75% of crashes in Iowa happen in less than 2 inches of snow. So again, really having that science kind of drive this level of effective messaging. And then lastly, WFO Cheyenne had a hazard threat matrix during the Mullen burn scar, and really highlighted some impacts to roads whenever, just a 1/4 of an inch of rain would fall on that burn scar. So a lot of great stuff happening across, not only in Central Region, but the Weather Service as a whole, that really can be shared across the regional boundaries. And that's what we really try to encourage at Central Region. So having this dual role of both being in the Pathfinder as well as the Winter Weather Program lead for Central Region headquarters kind of allows me to have this insight of new headquarter initiatives or things that they want to bring in that actually could be potentially helpful for the Pathfinder program. So this is an example of an initiative that's occurring within the WSSI group. They are working on an experimental product for focusing on travel. It was called WSSI Travel, but I think they're changing it or rebranding it to be WSSIH for an hourly update. This version of WSSI is incorporating sub-freezing road temperatures or sub-freezing road probabilities into the WSSI as well as her initialization. So a lot of great information there. The other thing that this one and they're testing out is incorporating it for time of day. So really focusing on rush hour traffic timing as well as day of the week factors, because 7 a.m. Saturday is totally different than 7 a.m. on a Friday. So a lot of great information coming out of that. So the other thing, provide guidance and best practices at the regional level. So these are just some of the issues that have cropped up over the past few years that we've kind of had to work together with the state DOT to kind of smooth the waters is the best way to describe it. But in Colorado, they actually reached out saying that their DMS signs don't match the forecast or the products that they issue. For example, the DMS signs actually said that a wind advisory was in effect for portions of Colorado, where the state of Colorado, the offices don't issue wind advisories. So there was a lot of information and disinformation going out between the two entities. So we worked together to try to help collaborate on DMS signs to make it to be more efficient and really enhance the message that the traveling public needs. This actually happened in the Pacific Northwest. We've heard from the state that they want us to change our call to action statements to remove hazardous travel wording. So I believe the background on that was by stating that there will be hazardous travel in your call to action statements, that particular state DOT kind of felt like we were telling the public that state DOT wasn't doing their jobs by keeping the roads plowed. So that was an issue in the Pacific Northwest, and I believe ROHAM had to work on it, as well as the Winter Weather Program, to kind of figure out the best results to make just not only the state DOT happy, but also get the mission across of hazardous travel as possible. And then in Nebraska, this happened just last year. They actually got a call from their state DOT stating that they want to cancel the WIA message for dust storm warning because it has the wording "pull aside, stay alive" verbiage. And they actually did not want people pulling over. It was a greater hazard in Nebraska's mind to have people pulled over from the state police perspective, as well as the DOT. The pull aside, stay alive verbiage that actually came from the Arizona DOT. So obviously what works in one state may not work into the other. So they had several meetings about how to change that, or they had several meetings with the state DOT, and now Nebraska has a new strategy on what to do when dust storm concerns are definitely possible. So those are just some of the issues that have cropped up when working with state DOTs that have escalated up to the regional level that we have smoothed over. So lastly, other road weather items. We have monthly meetings to ensure collaboration across the regions. This is hosted by RO, and we get together and we talk about what's going on in each region. We also have Federal Highway attend these meetings, so we kind of talk about potentially new Pathfinder states that we want to champion. Where should we have workshops? We also had a meeting discussing Federal Highways, what they want to do with the eclipse coming up, like what are their strategies that they're working on. So they have a lot of great information. Hopefully we can release that soon. Also, I sit on the Weather Severity Index Working Group. This is a quarterly meeting working group that gets together with multiple state DOTs and other entities discussing ways to improve upon WSIs and potential research to help other state DOTs. Again, sharing federal highway road weather information and resources, as well as state DOT updates that would be beneficial to the offices. And then the best way, instead of spamming everyone through email, we have continuous updates via our Central Region newsletter, as well as our dashboard. So this is just an example of our dashboard, and we update it every month with the biggest concerns that we want to get across to all Central Region offices. So that's really all I have. A lot of information. I did keep a list of resources, so if you want more information, the Central Region Surface Transportation Google site, but I know Eric has built one for you guys as well. There's also that Federal Highway Stakeholder Meeting article in the Insider if you want to check that out. WSSI Travel, there is a story map out on that, so if you want to check it out, the link's there, and then our Central Region ISD Services newsletter as well. So with that, I'll stop talking and turn it back over to Eric.
Thanks, Stephanie. And we have our Google site, but I feel like we took a lot of it from you guys. And I think one of the important things here in the last year or two is that we've been working together. We've started these monthly calls that Rome leads. We have the FHWA there, and now the purposes of this and a subsequent webinar, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We want to get Eastern Region offices involved. I think you had the slide that showed the map of where Pathfinder strategies are being implemented. And we had 3 states with the stars on it. So those, I believe, all have the formal Pathfinder relationships. They've had the workshops, and that's Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maine. Maine had theirs last winter. So Maine got spun up last winter. And I know that during our calls, we've talked about, what other Eastern region states can we get, kind of spun up more formally. And so that's kind of for the audience to ponder, and come to us if you're interested. We're not going to require anything, but I think that's really, really awesome. And so I want to just open up we have time for a couple of questions. So does anybody have questions for Stephanie on anything that she discussed? All right, not hearing anything. So one thing for me is, I'm interested to learn more about the WSSI travel. I think that's gonna be really cool. Do you know like a time frame of like when those are gonna start being released for experimental use?
Not to my knowledge. I know definitely not this winter, especially since WSSI is focusing on bringing the PROB WSSI into operational focus. So my guess is more information will be coming out next winter, but I think it's because they're changing their parameterizations and rebranding it to make it more hourly. I think that's what's causing the delay. But Dr. Dana Tobin from the WSSI group, she'd be the best person to talk to.
Awesome. John, you have a question?
Yeah, so we've been in touch with Dana Tobin quite a bit, and WSSI hourly is available in an experimental fashion. And I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. It just got up and running like 2 days ago, I believe. And as Stephanie indicated, there are a lot of changes that are being done. For example, with snow squalls, they're trying to implement a blowing snow component to better represent how snow squalls are blended. So continually evolving, but I'll go ahead and drop that link in the chat that you guys can use and see how useful it is. Obviously, it's experimental and should not be shared broadly, but a lot of really fun stuff that Dana's doing. Located in Pennsylvania, working for WPC, and really, really good friend of mine. But I'll share that in the chat, and feel free to make use of that throughout the winter.
Thanks, John. Anybody else have questions? Gail.
Yeah, hey, great presentation. If we are interested in trying to spin this up at our offices and be more involved, how should we go about approaching you folks?
Reach out to myself, Melissa, or you've already done that, so I'll reach out to you and we can start talking about that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, Stephanie will be here, and we'll circle back to a broader open question period. We want to have some discussion and dialogue, and so we'll get to that. But thank you, Stephanie. Just Central-Region is a great example for this. You guys are doing a lot. It's well organized. Western Region, I think I see Chris Matarosha on here as well. Another example. Western Region is doing a fantastic job with this. And each region's a little different for what they need and what they do. And I think you see that when you compare the different regions. So our model isn't going to look exactly like Central Region. It's not going to look like Western Region. It's not going to look like Southern Region. But we're going to use what works and tailor stuff to our needs. We got a lot of interesting, unique situations like New York City, Boston, DC, Philadelphia, all the way down 95. It's a busy corridor, a lot of stuff going on. And with that, we're very lucky that in tropical as well, which Central Region notoriously does not have to deal with, at least in the sense that we do. But we're also very, very lucky that we have Ashley Novak and John Banghoff, who at the field level, are really two of the biggest leaders in this. There's other people, and I don't want to discount those, but we're very lucky to have Ashley and John. And I think that as we've seen other offices spin up, it's based off of using people that have had some success. And so we have 2 offices, 2 states that I think have a long history of success on this and are doing some really cool things. Just to remember what order I'm passing this off over in. I believe it's Ashley's up first. I'm going to hand this off to Ashley.
Thanks, Eric. So Ohio Pathfinder began several years ago, and with Ohio Pathfinder, we actually started very small. We had discussions starting about snow squalls and really trying to figure out how we can mitigate the weather hazards associated with snow squalls. And we started with one office and the one topic, and then with time had an expansion over time, where, as you can see on the screen there, now it's with ODOT, the Ohio Turnpike, DT, and the private weather vendor, the National Weather Service, and all the National Weather Service offices in Ohio that are a part of Pathfinder. So now it's a fully integrated into the structure of transportation and weather service and DTN at this point in time. We do have the pre and post season meetings to sort of go over what we would like to do for the upcoming seasons. Usually we start with, after a season, we look at what happened in the previous season and, hey, are there any big action items that we want to start tackling for the next winter? And then finalize anything with the preseason meeting. We really strive for making sure that we have that open communication and that we have that throughout the season. But we do have sort of a mid-season review check-in to make sure, hey, what's working? Is there anything that we need to improve upon? And so we like to touch base mid-season to go over some of those aspects. How we operate in Ohio, we have weekly check-ins via Microsoft Teams. That really works well for the Department of Transportation, a lot of the state level entities in the state. And so DOT runs that, and also with having the weekly check-ins, we're able to keep that communication and really develop that relationship throughout the winter months. There is a really big focus in Ohio for the winter months. It's always been something that's been very, has a lot of impacts for the Department of Transportation. There's also other weather information signage, especially with the high winds in addition to winter weather, and also significant other weather as well. But winter weather is definitely a big priority with transportation and the impacts there. So we have those weekly check-ins via Teams, where with that, our DTN, the private weather vendor there, they do a initial weather briefing and talks about the main impact messaging. And then at that point, all the Ohio serving offices will chime in as well, followed by any questions from DOT at that point in time. It's worked out really well. And then we also we look, throughout the week, and if there's a second weekly check-in that's needed for a high impact event. And notice I say high impact, not necessarily, we aren't always talking about, your winter storms. You can have something like your snow squalls or something like that. That can be a high impact event that we might need to have a second check-in for. We do have the Slack Ohio Pathfinder room, and that room is strictly for transportation entities, DTN, and weather service to have that open conversation in there and sharing of information. With our office, we actually, and for Ohio, we have set up where we have automatic emails that are sent to transportation sector there for polygon-based products, such as the snow squall warnings. And so that way they can get on those automatic emails. It has what signs in the state to put information on for those polygon products like the snow squalls. So that goes right to their inbox, and they can easily put that road sign on there, in addition to the other products like winter storm warning, road sign information, and all that's there on that page. A lot of different other sharing of information. We have access to some of their transportation type information with the RWIS data and a lot of history of RWIS data. So you can go back and do research projects as well with a lot of that information that's on that site. It's really nice and laid out that we have access to. And also, our sharing of weather information as well. And a lot of messaging via social media. And if there's really that person that at your Department of Transportation. That's your the voice of theirs, where they're out there and talking about weather. We have a lot of sharing of their information, as you can see in some of those examples there, with sharing the traffic cameras and all that. But then they also have where they're sharing weather service products and services as well. So it's a back and forth between that. It's not just one way, and making sure that we have a collaborative message across the board with DTN, Weather Service, and Department of Transportation. But it doesn't stop there with just those items, because we, as Stephanie had mentioned, we have also different research and operational projects. And, once you start that relationship with your Department of Transportation, the road, so to speak, is really endless as to what you can do. And so we've had, different outreach efforts where we've had snow squall brochures where they've helped advertise the snow squall brochure and getting that awareness out there. But the snow squall research that undertook there to try to really mitigate a lot of those weather hazards associated with snow squalls, because that is such a big cause of fatalities with the high speeds associated with those. And other operational projects, when they're looking at, hey, we're looking at doing this with some subset of another project that they're working on, you're getting brought into these conversations and becoming a part of those conversations. So what started as something very small many years ago has now expanded into a very vibrant Pathfinder that's always constantly evolving, and the discussions there. And it's great to be a part of too. And I really like to say that if you're thinking of starting it, don't hesitate to start one. The relationship with these different entities is great, and the fact that you're helping a partnership to save lives is really important. So with that, I will pass it over to John for Pennsylvania.
Fantastic. Gonna swap over and unmute myself. And you should be able to see my screen. So Pennsylvania Pathfinder started back in 2018, really right before I came on as a full-time meteorologist. I was a student volunteer at the time. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the workshop to kick this thing off. And we have a relationship with our partners that I'm really proud to be a part of. You can see the partner entities, the main transportation partners of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, PennDOT, and then PEMA. Our private sector, the private sector vendor for PennDOT and the Turnpike is AccuWeather, which happens to be right across town. And then we've also looped in Pennsylvania State Police on some of the aspects of these initiatives. So similar to Ashley in Ohio and a lot of the Pathfinder initiatives across the country, we do host pre and post season meetings with not only the folks that are involved sort of at the supervisory and managerial level, but also some of the communications folks, because those are the folks that are really boots on the ground, getting the message out about some of these different winter hazards primarily. We continue to do collaboration via Slack/NWS chat, and those are held every Monday, I believe at 10 a.m. Similar to what Ashley indicated, our office in State College will initiate discussion, and then the other 4 offices that cover Pennsylvania will chime in, as well as the AccuWeather meteorologist. And so that's been a very helpful interaction, just to have regularly occurring conversations, and the ability to now use Slack and share images has been a game changer for us. Like many other states, Pennsylvania has plenty of digital message signs or DMSs, and so we've chatted with them extensively about activation strategies and what thresholds we have, and the use of, say SPSs versus warnings, watches, all that sort of stuff to communicate and convey, and have ensured that all of our transportation folks are on our briefing lists so that they're getting the regular cadence of hazardous weather information from us, not only for winter, but also throughout the entire season. And then one of the things that's been just a treasure trove of information, and if you don't yet have access, I encourage you to do so, is these road weather information sensors, or RWIS, along with the webcams that come with it. We had a snow squall event a couple of days ago, and in real time, we're able to watch as the snow squall is affecting a portion of I-80 in Northwest Pennsylvania, and we can see traces of air temperature and road temperature, as well as visibility and grip. And that data in real time is invaluable as we're making decisions about, are we going to go with a baseline snow score warning? Are we going to upgrade it to significant? Are we talking about flash freeze conditions? What does it look like on the ground? And having that weather data is invaluable. The webcams have also been a really useful tool for us to even be able to do like a 2 or 4 panel showing how quickly visibility can drop in snow squalls, to show how road conditions are evolving, and snow on the roads is a really powerful tool for us to be able to communicate and message in concert with some of those partners. A lot of the sort of stereotypical Pathfinder initiatives focus on the things here on the left, but a couple of the things on the right-hand side that I think have been really neat, I call them secondary successes, are awareness week campaigns. We've had a lot of success for flood, winter, and snow squall awareness weeks with posting content that has all of these partner logos on the graphics. And we think that that's just a really valuable tool to be able to increase credibility and show that we're in partnership with a lot of these state agencies. And we've shared social media plans, and some of the communications folks at those agencies have also created some graphics that frankly are better than anything that I'm capable of creating. We've been able to sort of force multiply and share those out as well. Similar to Ohio, we've also been involved with research projects largely related to snow squalls, looking at the radar utility of snow squalls and how, as the beam gets higher, going to overshoot those snow squall returns off on radar. And so how do we plan and prepare for that? We've looked at some crash data to show what's the frequency of these sorts of things. A big thing has been the flash freeze component, and you may be aware, but there have been situations where the road temperature has been as high as 55 degrees prior to a flash freeze. And as long as the air temperature is below freezing, that flash freeze can still occur. So some really valuable information with research projects, getting data from our transportation partners. Snowfall measurements have been something that we've had mixed success with at some of these maintenance sheds for PennDOT. Super valuable, obviously, for them to be able to stick a ruler in the sand, or in the snow, I should say, to be able to get data. There's been some limitations on the, labor front, and having to perhaps change job descriptions since they're union positions to add in that responsibility. So have had mixed success with that, but it's at least been something we've been able to do to call up to a particular maintenance and say, hey, how much snow do you have on the ground? And that's been nice. Variable speed limit signs are another thing that PennDOT has been piloting for the past several winters, which have been really, really awesome to tap into. They've continued to expand the coverage of them, spanning most of I-80 across our county warning area. And the thing that we found, especially with snow squalls, is that if you can either or both reduce the amount of traffic or reduce the speed of traffic, that's going to lead to better outcomes in some of these pileups. And so PennDOT has deployed, I'm forgetting the number, I want to say upwards of 100 of these now across parts of the Commonwealth and some of these vulnerable locations to slow down traffic. And man, what a great resource that has been. Safety and preparedness messaging continues throughout the season. And then we've been starting to expand beyond just winter, looking at things like flooding, and having PennDOT share a shapefile with us of where some of the low water crossings might be for our situational awareness as well. So a lot of really neat stuff there, and have enjoyed all the innovations and developments that have come. We're going to be presenting about Pathfinder in Pennsylvania at AMS in January, sort of looking back at the last 5 years, and I'll certainly go into way more detail about some of this stuff, perhaps even at a future webinar here for Eastern Region. The thing that I want to close with, I heard a little chime, and because I'm on one monitor, I'm not able to see it, but as we get close to 11, the thing I want to close with is this Jamboard. So we've put together this interactive Jamboard. If you haven't used them before, I'll go through that in a second. We want to hear from you. We've been having some success and some struggles in Pennsylvania through the course of our time. Certainly Ashley and the folks at Wilmington have dealt with similar things in the state of Ohio. So we want to sort of use this as a repository of where you are in your state across the Eastern Region, and how maybe have you been successful? What are the things you've struggled with? How can Eastern Region and maybe some of the more senior offices help you? All these things and more are included within this. So I'm going to click over to that right now and just give you an idea of sort of how this will work. It looks like folks are in, and I appreciate somebody for sharing the link. The way this works is if you go over to the left-hand side here and click on the sticky note, you're going to be able to type. And so I'll say I'm from WFO State College, and I'll say 5 years, 2018. And then I can change the color if I want to. Unfortunately, there's no red to rep my Buckeyes, but I'll go with orange, I guess, instead. And this is how it would work. And then there's a variety of questions that you can click through. These are the arrows on the top of the screen. You can click through. So what are some of your Pathfinder program or transportation partner relationship successes? What have you struggled with? How can more experienced Pathfinder offices or states better aid the startups? How can Eastern Region assist local offices with Pathfinder activities? And then any other thoughts you have about Pathfinder efforts. So again, you can use the arrows at the top of the screen to be able to click through these, click the sticky note on the left-hand side to be able to add something. So feel free to get in there and talk about all that stuff. This is really where the meat of this webinar is going to find value as we begin to capture where people are and start the conversation moving forward. So I'll put this back on here briefly for those that want to use the QR code as well. And with that, I am done with my prepared content and would be more than happy to pass it back to Eric or Jordan to sort of formally wrap things up.
Thanks, John. I think we're really looking forward to see what you all have to put in the Jamboards. This is a bit of a data collection for us, and we're going to go through and read what you guys have to say and figure out how we can move forward in Eastern Region with Pathfinder. Also want to, once again, post the Google site link, which I just did in the chat here. There's some great resources which Ashley and John have helped put together about Pathfinder resources and checklists for getting spun up. Also at the bottom of that page, there is a spreadsheet of local contacts, and if you click where it says click here, and I'm gonna get this posted in the chat here. But if you have a point of contact that you want to be included on, say, emails or things like that, let me see how I can get this posted in. But we'd love to have those so that if we send out an email, we have a point of contact from the different offices. And so with that said, we would love to see Pathfinder formal and informally expand in Eastern Region. And for those that, want to try and form formal relationships, reach out to me. I know Gail's already expressed her interest. And we have partners at the FHWA. Rome is, available to help. I'm available to help. We want to help start up some of these relationships. One of the things from the recent call was, just, an interest, and maybe it's not this year, but maybe next year, try and have a couple more Eastern Region states be places where we have those workshops to try and build those relationships. And so, that's kind of the goal with this. We're planning to do a second webinar on Pathfinder with a focus on Eastern Region and getting spun up, like specifically getting spun up, and some success stories and stuff like that. The details are still being finalized. The date and times are still being finalized, but that's something that we're planning in the near future here. So be on the lookout for that. Please, share this. The webinar has been recorded. Please share that, and we'll make sure we share the slides too. Share that with other folks in your office who weren't able to attend. Talk about this, with if you're, a meteorologist or a lead, talk about this with your management, or if you're a MIC to WCM, talk about this with your staff, and see, what your office, wants to and is capable, of doing. I know there's, workload constraints and stuff like that. But this is one where, we can have a big bang for our buck if, we embrace these partnerships and we work together to, really try and, reduce the risk and save lives on the roadways. Jordan, is there anything that I'm missing?
No, I think you covered it really well, Eric. Underscoring the importance that Eric said of the Jamboard activity that John eloquently laid out. This doesn't have to end today. Feel free to share the Jamboards too. I feel that this can continue as a resource, and it's a helpful resource for us to formulate how and in what way we're going to structure and organize the follow-up webinar that Eric mentioned. And that's equally important to facilitate the ongoing sharing of information and to formulate how we can best accomplish these goals, as Eric and everyone else noted, not being required, but as Rome, Stephanie, John, Ashley, Eric laid out, the massive benefits of integrating these practices into operations is very beneficial to overall operational efficiency and operational smoothness in high impact situations. I guess, Eric, we're seeing some initial feedback, but this doesn't need to end today. As far as the feedback on the Jamboards, feel free to have this be an open forum. We will keep tabs on the submissions to this. I guess at this point, we can open it up to the entire panel if we want to do that, to have any final questions. So feel free for everyone to come back on and see if we have any final questions, comments, curiosities, wonderings. This is an opportunity to speak to everyone together.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, this is the time. Please, if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone, turn on your camera. We want this to be interactive, and if you don't have questions, maybe you want to talk about something you're doing locally, for others to hear and for us to hear, that's also welcome. But we plan, we kind of left a 25-minute buffer about here, 24 minutes, to have question and answers, just an open session. You can go down rabbit holes, and we've got the subject matter experts here. So this is the time to have some of these conversations. And feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. Stephanie?
I'll get us going. I was curious. It sounds like Ohio and Pennsylvania do something similar, where you have conference or either an email or a call at the beginning of the week to kind of focus on what potentially could happen over the next 5-7 days. Is that something that is similar in Maine, since you guys just started Maine, or is Maine doing something different?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
No worries. So it sounds like Ohio and Pennsylvania are doing something similar, where the beginning of the week they do a email or a conference call with their state DOTs and third-party entities to kind of highlight any hazardous weather that's going to occur over the next 5-7 days. That's something that's not common in Central Region. So my question was, I was just curious if Maine has adopted something similar.
Is anybody on here from Maine that can speak to that?
Maine does it differently. We let the DTN actually drives that. That's the weather provider, and they actually drive the calls on our end.
Okay. And how's that been going for you guys? It's been about a year since the initial meetings. Have you felt that that's been smooth? Have there been some road bumps? Or, has it been successful? Can you share anything about your experience in this past year?
We thought last winter went fine, and so far we've been fortunate this winter to not have had any events that meet the threshold.
Do you guys have any plans to do an exchange where they send a couple people over to the office or some of your folks over to the DOT to build and maintain?
That's something, if somebody from Gray is on, that would be better answered by then, because we're sitting up here in Caribou, removed from the state.
Absolutely. Anybody from Gray on? I don't think I'm seeing anybody. I don't think I'm seeing anybody. So okay. Yeah, I mean, in every state's a little different, and in some of them, you've got your WFO right near the DOT, and some, like Caribou, you're a long drive, from the Central DOT. Anybody, else have questions or anything like that? Nelson.
Yeah, hey, Eric, and yeah, excellent presentations by John and Stephanie and the group there. And yeah, I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing, and it's something certainly we would be interested in. I think we're gonna have to work with New York State. We have multiple WFOs. New Jersey, work with Sarah and exploring it, or Connecticut, so 3 WFOs. So I know there was, and I don't know if Roham is still on. I know there was an effort pre-COVID to do something with Connecticut Pathfinder group. I think we had everything set up. There was like a meeting or a workshop that was set up, but it kind of fell apart when COVID started, and I wasn't sure if there was, but there was interest from all 3 WFOs in kind of participating. I'm not sure if there was, I don't know if Roham or had any, kind of insight into whether that was, and I know the DOT was also interested in that. I don't know if there was any, anything out there where it was going to kind of be reestablished, or that kind of connection, or that workshop to get things going. But so I see that as one possibility. The other thing is, in New York State, and I was curious with John and Stephanie, like we have the Thruway, and then we have the DOT authority. We also have the OEM. So one of the challenges for us is like multiple conference calls when there are big events that can involve multiple states and take quite a bit of time to kind of a briefing could go a half hour, 45 minutes when you're talking about, and then multiple briefings for different roadway entities. Have you guys found that you've been able to kind of maybe consolidate some of that, if you do have that challenge of kind of I guess strenuous workload during winter weather events, having to deal with or having to assist multiple agencies who are kind of all maybe where there's a lot of connections. I think where you can kind of streamline some of this through a Pathfinder type initiative.
Yeah, Nelson, I would say in Pennsylvania, we've not had a ton of difficulty with sort of multiple things going on. Actually, a lot of times, AccuWeather will initiate the call for PennDOT for the weather event itself. And so AccuWeather provides that briefing, and the Weather Service will sit on that call and just sort of observe. In fact, rarely do we add a ton of value to that. And so in a way, it works nicely that private vendor is providing the primary weather briefing to those departments of transportation. And then the Pathfinder's role is really just message collaboration, right? And so that's worked fairly nicely. And then sort of throughout the winter, even when it's quiet, we've developed a good relationship with the Turnpike Commission as well as PennDOT and some of those messaging strategies throughout the year. So I imagine in New York it can get way more complicated, and certainly with you guys having multiple states, it's going to be way more complex than what we deal with in Pennsylvania with State College having only one state. But Pathfinder has been effective at getting everybody sort of steering in the same direction, streamlining some of those processes so that everybody can have a sort of the same playing field that we're all working off of.
Yeah, and I'll chime in from Ohio too. We don't obviously have the same complexities either, but it is really the streamlined process where it's not a very long call. You're talking, maybe 10 or 15 minutes for a lot of these calls, from the point where DTN starts it with going through the weather briefing portion, to every Weather Service office chiming in, to even the questions from the DOT portion. It really is pretty streamlined and moves pretty fast, so that way you can get on and do other things, and provides that framework to where you don't have maybe a lot of different entities and a lot of different things going on with that.
Yeah, the main goal of your call is to work on a message for the traveling public and to enhance that message. Like Ashley said, it really should take no more than 10, 15 minutes at worst. I know some of the offices who do have state liaison roles as well is they actually hand off the Pathfinder presentation to the office that is expected the weather to impact them the most. So whether you're expecting a pretty good LES event, so maybe you just want to hand it off to Buffalo just to brief on that, since it's not going to be impacting Albany too much. So that's another way you can definitely get around it, or to help alleviate the duties.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, it's definitely interesting. I think something I'll talk to our my colleague WCMs from the different offices, because it can be challenging on some of these calls where, and I think, more focused on lake effect sometime, more focused along the coast. And then, for us, it can be multi-hazard where, snow is one part of it, but then it can be other things. So you have the state who's interested in one thing. I know with New York State, such a large area, DOT is really interested in resource allocation ahead of time. So that's always, I think, and Thruway as well. So and they both have, they're two different entities. So there's similar interest, but I think there's also individual interest. So, but it seems like the Pathfinder, in terms of improving the partnerships, I think, and the communication is probably a big key to that. And we have worked separately with at least our downstate New York State DOTs, where we've been able to at least get some input into the road signage. That's been helpful. We've gotten access to their emergency operations plans and also their VMS signage plans. So we've been able to provide a little bit of input, but that was just kind of working locally. New York City has got its own, they're kind of a separate entity. There is a lot of input, or sanitation is the one who's kind of doing the street cleaning and things like that. So it's where I think the Pathfinder could help in terms of, especially where you have multiple agencies who are dealing with, kind of road safety, kind of road clearing, road preparedness, things like that. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the insight from you all, and I think it's something I'll talk with the rest of it, because I don't want to force anybody into anything they're not interested in either. But this is really neat, and I'm sure we'll have discussions with Eric about maybe how to go forward with something here. But no, very cool stuff. Thank you.
Nelson, thanks for bringing all that up, because there's a bunch of different little points in that. I know you guys are kind of leading, or at least involved with spinning up that Eastern Region Policy Messaging test bed thing. And if you've seen the DOTs actually their playbook, what are they making their decisions on? Maybe they're making decisions on 3 inches of snow, and you could then tailor policy messaging to be well, there's a 65% chance of exceeding your threshold for plowing or something like that. Just making some stuff up. That would be a really cool way to do that. And there's been some papers, and I can dig them up and share them, if you guys are interested, that the Texas DOTs calculates their cost loss for salting and not salting, to figure out where that decision point is. And I think there was someone in Central-Region had this big study that I think went into probabilistic stuff. I just saw it the other day, came across it again, so I dig that one out. But there's a lot of really cool stuff there. And I see on Stephanie's map that was provided to us a month ago, and I know it's up to date. The state of the practice for Pathfinder. So Texas has already had a workshop, and New York hasn't. And I know New York's a complex state with a lot of different agencies, but having done some looking into Texas, they're even more disconnected. So I think that there's something we could do there, but again, that's assuming all the New York offices are kind of on board with this, and maybe there's a way if it's down on Long Island, the event, it's you guys take the lead on it. If it's lake effect, Buffalo takes the lead on it. If it's covered most of the state, maybe Albany takes the lead on it. Something like that. That I think there's some interesting conversations there to be had, and figure out what the interest is. And I know Rome would be, happy to help with that.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in real quick. I mean, this is a great question, Nelson, and I think it's one of the most important places in the country for that question to come from is how do we get the DOT all on one page, sort of for us to respond to them. And I'll be honest, it's an extremely hard thing to do. Okay, so we tried to do it in Texas, and it came down to and at that time we had great funding, and we set up meetings in the Houston CWA and one in the Amarillo, and we didn't even come close to getting a whole state thing done because of the complexity. That's not to say that it was a failure. It was a great success because things did come from that. A lot of more regionalized stuff came out of it. But then when you get to the level of complexity of a New York State, even Pennsylvania, to be honest, I mean, Pennsylvania coming, is a great kind of model of like how the US is in general for Pathfinder in terms of you have various entities, you have different state agencies. So New York, of course, is maybe the most complex in that, or at least among the top. And from my perspective, we also incentivate the DOT or the FHWA, excuse me, as much as possible from the federal level to try to get their regional and down to their, in their own bureaucratic chain to get it down to the places that you guys will be working with. So we will continue to try to help that process along. But in my experience, really, it's getting the DOT's ducks in a row together first that is the harder challenge, and then it'll come to our level where we can have the most direct participation. Because I'm sensitive, Nelson, to what you said about I remember this feeling from the field is like I worked in Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico you had so many different agencies, you have so many different. You can't just say yes to everybody who asks you for a service. You would be inundated with workloads. So I am sensitive to that. And just to say that the process may be long in places like that. It's quicker in places like Nebraska, for example. It's much easier in places like that. But the process needs to start somewhere, and that somewhere is really trying to get the DOTs to work with through their regional management structure and down through their level to kind of get us the like one face person. Because then I think, Nelson, if you get that one face person as a WCM, then your job becomes a lot easier. But we'll pass it back with that.
Yeah, I just appreciate that, Roham, and I think, and I want to add that Albany and Steve DiRienzo, so WCM there, Chris Gittro, and then their team there, MIC, have done a really good job working with New York State OEM, because all the headquarters are located up in Albany, with the DOT, the Thruway as well. But I know from just from some of our experiences, I know Buffalo's experiences last year with the lake effect snow, where they were doing not only statewide DOT calls, statewide Thruway calls, plus regional DOT Thruway calls, and that wasn't to and then on top of that you have all the emergency management calls, other agencies. So it just seems like there is opportunity through this maybe kind of Pathfinder partnership to even streamline things more. And we appreciate what Albany's done already, and that's why it's definitely something I'd be interested in exploring with our state liaison offices and our neighboring WFOs. And the other thing is the interesting part, I think, that both Ashley and John brought up was the how the private sector is rolled in, which is something that we do not. We don't currently interface in any type of calls with the private sector. We know sanitation, they have 3 different private sector vendors, for at least for New York City, that they're using. I think state DOTs, I'm sure they're at least using 1 or 2, but we don't have access to that. So it's pretty interesting, and we're not sitting in any calls with them. So I think that would be an interesting angle as well, that maybe opens up some opportunities for more road sensor data, webcam data, something like that, or more specialized roadway modeling, or something or impact modeling, things like that. So I definitely see some opportunities. So yeah, appreciate all the insight, and I'll be following up with Eric and our fellow WCMs.
Awesome. Thanks, Nelson.
Sure.
We got about maybe five minutes or so left. Anybody else have any final questions, thoughts, things like that?
Quick brief interjection. There was an email that went out a couple weeks ago regarding a survey that the OU Public Policy Research Group is putting out regarding winter road hazards messaging. And it's been distributed to Susan MICs. If you haven't gotten that, touch base with them. But I'm going to put the link in the chat here. Dana Tobin, who I mentioned earlier, is the PI on that. She's working on WSSI travel. And I went through the survey last night, and it's all the stuff we've been talking about today. So the OU is trying to get sort of a broad overview of how offices are handling winter weather messaging in terms of what interactions you have with your DOT and your other partners, and what are your limitations, and what are sort of you're not allowed to say that, those sorts of things they're trying to capture to provide some best practices on road hazards messaging. So if you get a chance to fill that out, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes or so. And again, Dana is really interested in a nice cross section. And I think Eastern Region and the I-95 corridor in particular would be fascinating to see the varied ways that those sorts of situations are handled.
Thanks, John, for putting that in there. And that's one thing that our office is working on with that team, as well with some of that road weather messaging sign and a lot of the, looking at the future of IWTs and some of the road weather messaging aspects and all that. So the more feedback that we can get from that survey is really going to help us moving forward with that project. So thanks for bringing that up.
And one last note, a little bit different of a tangent, but kind of, this is run from SSD. So I would be amiss not to bring this up. We've talked with G-Sun, the social science SBES lead for the Weather Service. We've talked with Gina Esco. There's integration at that high level of like doing more with transportation, DSS type things and Pathfinder. I think we've seen some examples. Chris Matarosha had one, where they can quantify, the value of their DSS. And, Ken always talks about, turning love into dollars. Well, what if we're, taking that love, providing the dollars, we're contributing that economic benefit, and passing that along. It'd be really interesting to do that someday. And maybe we'll, develop tools and data sets and data flows and that stuff that, is being looked into. But, the Pathfinder stuff, we can do that now. It's messaging based. There are some road weather tools and data sets and stuff like that we can and should be, using, and we make them available on our Google site. But there's more to come here. So I feel like this train's getting rolling, but it's about to, I feel like there's gonna be like a sprint coming up here in the next couple of years where there's gonna be a lot of cool new things coming. And so, would love any offices that, are interested in, becoming Pathfinder formally or informally, reach out to me. Let's figure out how we can do that and build our relationships with the DOTs and the FHWA and, provide support for those who are on our roadways. So with that, unless there's any burning questions, I appreciate everyone taking 90 minutes out of their Thursday morning to come and listen to this. I'm going to hand it over to Jordan for final wrap up. But he'll have information on recordings and where to find, this after the fact.
Yeah, Eric, thank you very much. And also, again, want to thank Eric for your emceeing this morning of this webinar, Ashley at Wilmington, John at State College, Melissa and Matt at Eastern Region, of course, and MSD and the ROC respectively, and our special guest this morning, Stephanie at the Central-Region ROC. Thank you so much, and Rome from National Headquarters. Time is a 4-letter word, and we really appreciate all the time you all took this morning and all of you for joining us and having a great first conversation. This is a process, and it's a process that's evolving. If the evidence has not been clear from the conversation this morning, that is all you can say for now. And we'll have additional conversations moving forward. As Eric teed up, there will be a webinar to be determined moving forward. And with that said, as Eric mentioned earlier, this webinar has been recorded, so we'll get it up on the Eastern Region SSD Science Sharing Google site. And we'll get a note out to all of your management folks so it can be distributed for further dissemination for those that were not able to attend today. And we'll take it forward from here. So thank you all so much. At the 90-minute mark, wishing you all a warm rest of your Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.